There was a church I went to named Watermark Community Church, and their membership process, you had to go through like these 5 steps, and the last step is to find a place to serve. If you don't find a place to serve, you cannot be a member. And I applied for all of their ministries and got denied for all of them. Right here, is a Bible version. I'm creating a new Bible version because I studied the Hebrew, I studied the Greek, I studied, I went to seminary. I went to seminary. I love God. I love ministry. This is my passion in life. And Watermark told me, one ministry got back to me a couple of years ago, told me I wasn't righteous enough to serve on one of their ministry teams. And I called the guy out to the church, and the guy denied everything. I never said that. I was like, hey, you did. You said I wasn't righteous enough to serve on your ministry. And then Watermark said that my ministry I have online is not real. A couple years later, God told me to leave everything, go North Wisconsin, and I came. I went to one church that they were like promoting homosexuality and the removal of pronouns from the Bible and all kinds of sinful stuff that is an abomination to the Lord. And I called the church out on it, and they called me judgmental. Well, I left that church, went to another church, and the other church I went to, same thing. They promoted homosexuality, all these sinful things that are contrary to sound doctrine. So I left that church, went to another church. The other church I went to, the pastor would stand on stage in the heat of the moment and say that God gave him a divine message to give to somebody in the audience. That in itself shows that the pastor is not very mature in his faith. And so that disqualifies him from being a pastor, because to be a pastor, you have to be mature in your faith. And one of those ways that you're mature in your faith is when you think God spoke to you, you don't get up and in the heat of the moment and say, God spoke to me, because maybe God did not speak to you. So I called that pastor out on that, and he called me judgmental. He told me all kinds of stuff. Where in that same church, God spoke to me and told me that the founding pastor was going to die, and I kept it to myself. And eventually, in a couple of months, he did die. And I told the lead pastor at that church, hey, God told me this is going to happen, and you need to get the funeral ready. And that pastor, he never replied back to me. And later on, I went back to ask him. I was like, I don't understand why God told me that this guy was going to die. What does he have to do with me? And he just looked at me like I was out of my mind, and it did not make any sense to me, because you claim that God speaks to you and you get up in the heat of the moment. And when God actually did speak to me, I kept it to myself for months. And now I'm asking questions about it, and you're just looking at me like I'm crazy or something. So I'm like, there's no way that this pastor was hearing from God if he's looking at me like I'm crazy when I do hear from God. Then there was another church I went to. The pastor said that, and this is in North Wisconsin, the pastor was saying that the angels helped God create the heavens and the earth. I never called that pastor on that because I was going through a bunch of stuff, but it was always in the back of my mind, and God like forced me out of that church through some hardship I was going through in life. And that was the first church I went to, kinda. The first church I went to was a Baptist church where I dated the daughter of a deacon. And man, this family was doing some corrupt stuff. They had all this land and money and stuff, but they were going and using food stamps. But they were boasting to everyone about how much money they had in the bank, how much land they have. and they had like 3 houses and 600 acres of land, but somehow they went to the IRS, they went to the government, and they qualified, or they made all the strings happen, and they got food stamps, and they got free health insurance, and they got all these government assistance programs. And they even told me when I was dating this girl, she's like, hey, you know, I want you to keep your income low so that we can continue to get benefits after we get married. I said, no, I'm going to go find me the highest paying job I can possibly find me. And that's how I'm going to pay my bills. I'm not just going to go live off the government. And they got mad. And she went around slandering my name all over the place. And so I got up and I defended myself. And I said, no, here's what really happened. And then that church actually went to war against me, threatened to sue me. Threatened to sue me for slander. I said, go for it. I would love for you to sue me so that we can go and open up an investigation into all the financial fraud that's going on with that church and that family. And they shut up real fast. My point is, so many people are wondering, how come people my age don't go to church anymore? How come these churches, 15,000 churches around the United States, closing up? How come nobody's donating to churches anymore? Well, maybe it's because pastors like Joel Osteen that have multi-million-dollar buildings don't help out the homeless. My generation is a generation that wants to be part of a, they want to make an impact that will shape the future, shape the nation, shape the world. This generation wants to make an impact. They don't just want to sit in the pew for 40 years and hear someone preach. They want to be part of the body of Christ. So my generation, they're not rejecting God. They're rejecting organized religion. That's the difference. So the churches that are just organized religion on Sunday morning, those churches ultimately will shut their doors before my generation becomes old, because my generation is not going to fund those kind of churches. And so that is one thing I'm trying to do in Northwest Wisconsin, is start a church that everyone is involved, that everyone can do what God has called them to do on this earth in this short amount of time that God has given to us. I'm all by myself, trying to achieve this all by myself. I'm trying to raise money to make it all happen. I got Patreon channel. I got a subscriber thing on Facebook. You can subscribe. Ultimately, when I plant a church in Northwest Wisconsin, all the members of the church are going to be involved in the functions of that church, just like in the Bible. Everyone's going to have a place in the local body, and that church is not just going to help the people who are members of that church. It's going to help the community and be a source of healing and a source of refreshment to the community around it. So all the pastors, all the preachers, all the churches are like, how come my generation's not going to church? It's because you're not the church. You're just a bunch of buildings with a name that says church on it. But y'all don't follow the same God of the Bible. If your church is at the point of shutting down because money's not coming in, or because all the members are dying and young people are not coming, it's because your church has turned its face away from God, and God is removing your lampstand from its place.